Hello, friends. So as you know, if you followed me for a while, I have a little cookbook. It's going to be like a family cookbook to hand down to my kids. Don't even know if I've ever told them about it. Let me raise this up so you can see here. And I've really had a lot of fun. I've been working on it for years. So I've got our little recipe for chocolate fudge. It looks like I accidentally skipped some pages there for some reason. Not sure what was going on there. I've got my figgy toast. Love. I've made fig jam with my littles. An easy sunset peachy crisp. And I painted strawberry salad. Let's see, more holiday fudge. So what I'm going to put here is I'm going to practice it first, but I'm going to make a recipe page for ginger kissed grapefruit juice. I love juicing, so I was kind of excited when I came across this. I'm practicing it first on here. This is my Artisto paper, and I've got 3 here. So I've got one straight on, I've got one with the peel on, and I've got one little wedge. And then I'll probably put a little glass or something like that. But what I wanted to do was just swatch out some of my colors, and I thought you might join me. I know in the past when I did this recipe book, you guys really enjoyed it, and what fun. I hope you're doing something like that. I know I have my grandmother's cookbook, and I love it, you guys. So, you know, it's something kind of fun to do, to hand down. Let me grab my 8 brush. Let's see here. Let me find my 8 brush. So I'm going to use my 8 brush, which will be coming out again and available at the end of summer. But you can also use, so this is mine. It's a snappy 8 round. Love it. I designed it with your guys' help, so it's pink. But you can also use, an 8 Princeton. Velvet Touch is my other favorite. So feel free to use that. This is a Neptune. If you have that, just keeping in mind, a Neptune is quite soft. So let's go ahead and start playing here. I want to swatch out some things, and I'm going to be using my laying pans. If you're a beginner, this is an excellent set. I talk about it all the time. If you don't want to hear about the supplies I'm using today, you can just fast forward. You won't hurt my feelings. So look at all the oranges and blues. These, I'm just a Paul Rubens fan, you guys. They are my favorite. And I use Winsor Newton for decades, but they've always got these colors. They're creamy, they're translucent, and their palette, my laying palette is perfect. It has every color I could want. So, as a beginner, you don't have to worry about mixing colors. You can just play. And this palette, it's Paul Rubens, the My Laying series, student grade, is very reasonable as well. So I want to use, let's start with this orange yellow. There we go. And I wish I had a grapefruit here. I'm going to embellish on my grapefruit a bit and make it kind of prettier than it maybe might be. So I like that color. I'm just going to write that down next to it so I can log that. So let me see. I said this was orange yellow. There we go, in the My Laying series. And then I want to have like a pink in there, and it kind of reminds me of when I do flowers and I add pinks and I add there we go, and I add oranges together. It's such a pretty combo. Look at that. I mean, how yummy is that? That makes me want to eat a grapefruit right then and there. So this one, so pretty, so excited. Rose red. And let's see, maybe we should put a little cad yellow in there just for a touch of warm. I don't want to go with the lemon yellow because that's a little cool. I just want to add a pop of this cad yellow, which is just a tiny bit warmer than the lemon yellow. And then, of course, our greens. And then I'm almost thinking I want like a magenta or something. So let's see, I've got two magentas here. We've got, I got to follow here. Cad yellow, yellow orange, cad orange, vermilion, scarlet, magenta, and deep magenta. So let's try out the magenta first. No, I think that's too warm. I don't want that. Let me see if I can just pick that up. Let's go with the deep magenta. You know, I might use a little of that. It's a little warmer than I want, but that might ground everything just a bit. Let's try, let's try this one here, which is, yeah, that might be okay. Oh, and I've got my 2 wells of water, guys, so that's important. Yeah, that's the one I think I'm looking for. It has a little bit more pink in it, which is what I wanted. So I think that's actually the magenta. I think that is more of the scarlet. So somewhere between there. And then what I'll do, as you know, I love mixing my greens. So what I'll do is have that tree green or sap green. And then what I'm going to do is, let me actually bring that all the way over, is I'm going to mix that with a little bit of those reds. Just, yeah, look at that. And that will give me this beautiful kind of neutral olivey green. I talked about these neutrals, by the way. I hope you were able to get my free series. It was a week long in Patreon. Yeah, there, that's what I wanted. So those will be the colors I use. Let me write those in there for you. So this is, this was the cad yellow. Cad yellow? Yeah, cad yellow. And not sure if for sure if I'll use that one or not. This was a scarlet. And this actually is a little deeper version of that. It is magenta. And then tree green. And I mixed it with my rose red. And it gives me this beautiful olivey green, but actually what our eye will pick up is some of that pink in there. So it'll really bring some harmony to everything. Okay, so I've got these handy dandy, had them for years, little stencils, and I just used that to draw some circle shapes here. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm first going to start out with a glaze, and I'll use my lightest color. So let's get some of that in our palette here. I'm going to switch out my palette. I love this palette, but it's really large, which is great when I'm playing with mixing colors because I have huge areas to work in. So this is my normal palette I would use. This is the Meaden, by the way, the one that's a little bit bigger. I also have the small one, which I love. So fun. I get so excited when I start to make these videos for you guys. Like, just the colors get me so excited. I can't wait. Okay, let's start with a light version of that cad yellow. So I've got about 50-50 in here. That's a good mid value to start with because you can go darker and it's not too light. So picking up that pigment, tap, 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 and I'm going to go in here and just lay down that glaze. I know it looks really lemony, but that's okay because we're going to be adding in other colors in there. So while it's wet, we could do two things here. We could do wet and wet, or we could do dropping in water while it's wet. So let me grab that cad orange. I think actually this was the yellow orange we decided on. Yeah, orange, yellow, yellow, orange. But be kind of careful with that one because it can be a little bit dark. And going to start dropping that in. So there's those two ways of doing this. Like I said, you could either drop-in color like I'm doing, which I really am a fan of as much as I love glazing, because it's just such a organic effect. Wish I'd bought a grapefruit to paint from in person here. And then I want to go into maybe some of this scarlet or magenta here. So let's grab a little bit of that scarlet. Let's see, which one was that? I think that was this one. I actually, let's see, got another little palette here. Yeah, we could go with that. And I'm going to drop it off over here. Just tapping in. Now this is damp on damp, you guys. This is not too wet. And I'm going to start running out of time here, because once that first layer of yellow dries, you've got to stop and let it dry, because otherwise you're going to get a lot of crazy blooms. Now I want to also put in there, let's grab a little darker. So let's go for the deep magenta. Yeah, that's just a little bit darker. And I'll go into the very edge here. Just a bit. So see, I'm tapping in here. My brush is not dripping wet because it's already wet what I'm going into. So when you're going wet into wet, you don't want to have as much pigment on your brush. All right. So I'm kind of liking that already, even though it kind of looks like an orange, but you know what? Make your grapefruit yours, you guys. Like, you could color it pink. You could do whatever color you want. The next thing I'm going to do is I drew this grapefruit here. So I've got the circle, and then I've got the little center part here. And I'm drawing a little darker than I maybe would for myself, because I want you guys to see this. And let's just put in some lines for the little segments like that. And something like that. There we go. Isn't that fun? I get so excited when I think of these things. I'm like, I haven't, oops, I just set my hand in that. I haven't put anything. I've been so busy with Patreon and all kinds of fun things, which, by the way, I would have never done Patreon if you guys hadn't brought that up. So thank you to all of you guys. I haven't put anything in my book for a while. So there you go. Those are a little smaller segments than I was kind of thinking, but that's okay. And then here, we'll just do that again. So I drew in kind of the rind here, and then we'll just something like that. Same kind of thing. We've got these little segments coming out. There we go, keeping it simple. Okay, how fun is that? I feel like in this too, I almost want to go a little darker. So what I will do a lot of times is I've got some reddish colors in here, pinky colors. I could add in a little bit of green. Now this might be too dry, so I might get the blooms. So what I'm going to do before I add that in is I'm going to let that dry. Then I can give it a damp go over just along here with barely some water, and I don't want to move around a lot in there because otherwise I'll just reactivate everything. So once this dries, I'll show you what I'm going to do with that. Okay, let's go into our little segments. I think since you can see this, and I'm more than happy to supply this little drawing for you, I'm going to roll over it with my kneaded eraser the perfect way. I know you guys have asked me about this to kind of lighten up those lines, but I can still see it. And let's just go in and start wetting those areas. And I'll start again, just like the skin, with a little bit of that yellow, but be careful because that cad yellow is pretty powerful, guys. Tap, tap, tap. And hopefully I don't stick my hand in there again. And just going in there, as you can see, I'm leaving some white space. And I don't want to do all of these at once because I want to work wet and wet here. So just using light pressure, tip of my brush. Now I'll go in and maybe pick up a tiny bit of that orange, and I want this to all blend. There we go. Just a tiny bit more. I rinsed my brush, picking that up. And you could have even wet these segments first if you really wanted to. And then I'm going to go in and pick up some of that pretty red we've got. Magenta, actually. And I'm going to go in and just touch in a tiny bit here, maybe at the top. While it's wet. Isn't that pretty? Let's go in there again. Is watercolors just the best, you guys? It's just the best. I love it. Look at those beautiful colors. Doesn't that just make you want to eat a grapefruit? There you go. So I'm working wet and wet. Let's keep going. A little bit of that yellow. I'm using that very lightly because that cad yellow, like I said, can really take over. And I'm leaving white space in there. So now I just tip the very tip of my brush in there. And let's add a little bit of that. And you know, honestly, like you could make a pink grapefruit if that's kind of your jam. Like make this whatever colors you like. And let's grab a little bit more of that reddish color. I know in the past too, I have had this pink grapefruit and it's really good and it's quite pink. This, by the way, is almost dry, so we'll be able to go in there. Look at that. So now that is a little bit of that wet and wet, and you see it spreading there. There we go. A little bit more. Tap, tap, tap. Ooh, look how pretty that is. And then I'll go around the very outer edge with, let's mix, how about if we mix some of either scarlet or magenta with just a little bit of yellow. And you could almost go in here and scrape in some little marks, but I'm not going to do that because I did leave some white space in there. So let's go around the edge. Let's see how steady my hand is. And I'm going to mix just a tad of the yellow-orange with just a tad of that red. There we go. And let's go around the outer edge here. Actually, this is even funner. Rinse your brush, so rinse all that paint off. Let's go rinse your brush, tap it off, and go around the edge with water. And then we'll just drop in. So you're just making that damp. Now let's go in and watch this. Ooh, see how it travels? Because watercolor goes, as you probably know at this point, where water is. So over there, it must have dried. That's fine. Put a little bit more orange paint in there. Look at that. How cool is that? So pretty. So there is our grapefruit slice. Now we'll go to this one, and let me roll over that again. And this is about dry, so we'll do that glaze on there, and you can see that. But look at how nicely this works. I like a kneaded eraser. I don't like with watercolor paper because it's got that beautiful texture. I don't like to scrub because, you know, you could damage that beautiful texture on our paper. So while I'm getting ready to paint that one, letting that one dry, which I think I'll put a tiny bit of brown in the center. I'm going to use my Van Dyke brown just to tap in. Ooh, there we go. Okay. So before I get started on that, I'm going to do the little leaves here because I have a feeling I'll end up putting my hand in there. Let's start with our tree green, which I've got in my palette here. Let me just grab a little bit more. There we go. excuse me. And I'm going to use that point, press, point. So point, press into your brush, open up that belly and up on the point. There you go. Let's do that again. Point, press, up on the point. And, you know, use the point of your brush to kind of shape it out. Now what I'll do in there is, we could add in a little bit of yellow. Just tap that in. We could use a little bit of maybe that green we created. Ooh, yeah, I like that. Look at that, so pretty. Let's start over again on the other one. And you could scrape in some there, so you could use anything for that. Let me see what I've got here. I've got these little styluses. I bought a whole set of these several years ago. They just have a point, but you could use the end, the tip of your brush, you know, whatever, credit card. And I'm just going to, there we go. So I kind of scraped in there some little veins, and then let's do the other side. So grab that light wash, tap, 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 look at all that paint that comes off when I tap. And point, press. Now I'm also in this one, if you notice, press, I'm using the side of my brush to get that width. Now I'll go in there with a tiny bit of that yellow, tap in a couple places, and then we'll go in with that dark green that we created. I've got a little puddle over here I created with the pink and the green. And let's go in here. Ooh, see that? And then just leave it. Don't play with this too much. You could tilt your page. And you get this beautiful wash, and look at the reddish colors and the greens together. So pretty. Wash and rinse your brush, making sure you wash it and you rinse it. And then let's go down the middle here. Look at that. Is this so fun? Gosh, I love watercolors. Okay, let's go back to this. I'm just going to do barely a shadow down below here, and I'm going to use kind of oranges opposite. Let me show you if I can find my little color wheel here. I've been using it so much lately with the color wheel series. Darn it. I don't, oh, here it is, here it is, here it is. Okay. So we've got these oranges. Opposite would be like these greens. A split complementary, by the way, is, so here we've got red and green, completely the farthest on the color wheel. If I moved over one, either direction, that's called a split complementary. So it's still a complementary, but it's just that one step closer to the warms, so it's just a little bit subtler than directly across, which I kind of like to do. So right now I'm using these oranges and red oranges, and I'm going to go over here into some of these blues, okay? Little fun fact for you there. So this is completely dry. I'm going to barely dampen it, but not move around too much in there, because again, you'll activate this and then you're going to mix all the colors. I want to glaze. Look at this too, you guys. Look at that beautiful organic feel. Isn't that awesome? Which, by the way, I want to add a little more color in there. Let's see. We could even add some orange into the leaves, just like with our, I know I'm jumping around, but I wanted to get this before it dried. So I'm picking up a little, boy, that could have been disastrous. A little bit of that orange yellow, tap, tap, tap. And let's add some of that to our leaves, just like I show you with your flowers. I think it's so cool to do that because it brings this coherency between your leaves and the fruit or the flower or whatever you've got there. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? Just a touch. Okay, back to the grapefruit. So I'm going to take the side of my brush. It's not soaking wet. I've dunked it in my water, tapped it off just a bit, and now I'm just barely going to wet this down here, then go into it with that bluish green. So here we go. I want to make sure it's wet. There we go. It's wet. Now get out of there because I don't want to mix it around too much. And let's go in with a little bit of our bluish green. Let's see what color that is. Let's try that. Ooh, so I went in and I don't want to fidget too much in there because again, I'll just create a mix versus getting a pretty blend. So there you go. Look at that beautiful shadow. Oh my gosh, this is going to be such a pretty recipe page. Let's go in and do our little halfie here. So I'm going to pretty much wet all of this time. There we go. A little half circle. And now I'll go in there with starting with our cad yellow again. And I grab a little bit of that, but look at how opaque, how bright that is. So I might need to add a little water. And you can always use your scratch sheet just to see how dark a value. We want to go in with about a mid value. So I'm going in, I'm just tapping in. I don't want to completely cover it. So I've got some white space in there. Then I'm going to go into that beautiful orange, tap that in. Let that kind of spread. Ooh, look how fun that is. Oh my gosh. I definitely think I need to be going and getting a grapefruit now. I want a little bit more of that magenta we used. And again, there is a pink grapefruit. That's really yummy too. There we go. And just letting that do its thing. So fun, right? And then I'll go around that edge again. So damp brush, I've rinsed out all my paint and I'm just light pressure, resting my hand here, going to use just the tip and put a little damp semicircle all the way around. Now before that dries, I want to go in and drop some of my paint in there. There we go. Let's see, let's go in here. And it's going to go wherever that water is. So see, it's just following the line that I put there of water. Let's go into a little bit of that pink, add some water to that. Ooh, so it's so fun to watch. Like it just goes where that water is. I always think that's so fascinating. Is that just me? I'm going to tap in a little bit here. There. Oh my gosh. Seriously, this is like the prettiest grapefruit I've ever seen. I've had a few of you ask me, so see how I got kind of this line right here? When that dries, what you can do is take just a damp brush. I mean, this is barely damp, and you can blend that out if you don't like that. So look at the beautiful shadow we got there. There you go. So that's what I'm going to do. You could also, in my book, I don't know if you noticed when I was just flipping through, I use a lot of pen and ink. I've used a little bit of pencil. So what you could do with this is you could actually add in some pen and ink if you want. It's not necessary because I actually like the way it looks. But if I wanted to add some things in here, I could. And the other thing I think, lastly, I want to add in here is maybe just a little bit of some spots. So I'm going to go in there with, let's see, let's pick up that dark red. I want a little deeper red even. Yeah, I like that one. That is a little bit more of, you could use deep magenta or madder red. It's just got a little warmer hue in there. And I'm just going to, I want to make sure that's dry. Let me give it a quick shot here. These are so handy in the winter, you guys. I think they're $12 or $15. I got this years ago. And when it's cold here, it takes forever for things to dry. So I just use this. So bear with me for a minute. That's all it takes. And what I'm going to do now, but I need to cover, oh, you know what I'll do? Oh, this is a good idea if I do say so myself, is, let's see, I used that one. Oh, I don't want that to be wet though, so hold on one second. I'm just gonna lay this over, and that way when I splatter, it won't only go in there. Let me dry this a bit though. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but look at how much lighter watercolors get. Isn't that weird? So acrylics can dry a little darker. Watercolors dry lighter. So now I'm going to go in here. I'll just, let's see, I think, is that the one? Nope, this is the one I used. And what I can do is do some splattering, and that'll help, because splattering, you guys, can get really crazy and go all over the place. So I'm going to try and keep it contained within there. Not a big deal if it goes other places, but okay. So I've got my red, and I think I'm gonna add a little green to that to warm it up, kind of like a neutral, but I don't wanna get rid of too much of the green. So let me just add a touch of green. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, so I've got all my spaces covered up that I don't want the splatter on. And then I'll just use this. And let's just, I really don't want it up here either. There we go. I'm getting kind of picky now, you guys. There we go. Okay, we've got our little spot here. I need a third hand, you guys. Ooh, exactly what I wanted. Okay. Let's get rid of that, get rid of it all. Ta-da! Look at that. Isn't that cool? So cool, you guys. So I've got those little spots there. And then I think I might just take my brush and add in a few little darker areas. So let's use that red again, that I actually mixed with just a tad bit of the green to create more of a neutral. Now, if you can't get a fine line with this, you could use, let me show you, I just had it in my hand. You can use this. This would be perfect, my angle brush or an angle shader or a flat brush, because it's got a nice chiseled edge. So actually, let's use that. But you could use a pen line. You could use a really light touch with your round brush. But I'm going to go ahead and use this. So let me tap in there. I feel like I need a little bit more of that. Just going back into my palette. Yeah, there we go. Don't want it too wet. So I'm loading the edge of my brush, but then I'm kind of tapping off. And then I'm going to go in there and just add in a few little lines. It just, sometimes it gives that little touch that can make a huge difference. See that? Like, it really just is like, oh, wow. I don't think I would even want to do that one. Okay, so rinse my angle brush. Now, you could be done right here, you guys. But I think what I want to do, I'm just going to play a bit. This is the cocktail series, but look at these beautiful oranges she's gotten here. So let's see what that orange looks like. That's kind of pretty. Let's see what else she's got. She's got this beautiful green. Ooh, yeah. That's pretty. Look at that sparkle, you guys. Isn't that pretty? The orange too, but so we could add in a little bit of that orange. Let's just get some of that on our brush here. Oop. And then I'll show you when I'm done here. And you don't have to do this step. You could have been done right here. But I want to add, and I will probably do this in my recipe book too. Let's add some in here. I always like to add just enough where it's like, ooh, the person looking is like, is that a sparkle I see? But I'm going to hold this up in a minute because look at the beautiful blends. Let's see. Let's do a little bit of that green. Loading my brush, trying to use the side of my brush. Ooh, look at that. Now that kind of just covered up all the little detail, but you know what? I don't even care, you guys. Look how pretty that is. Oh my gosh. Like seriously, don't you just want to eat that? And then last thing, again, you don't have to do these extra steps, but last thing, let's see what this pink looks like. If I could get away with that on the edge. Might be a little too pink. Yeah, it's a little too pink. All right, we'll just go with our red we've got here. Look at how little I'm using though, you guys. Just barely the tip of my brush. Now I can see the tip of my brush is pretty fat, so tap, tap, tap. And light hand holding my brush up and down, so I'm just getting the tip. That's why it's so important to protect that tip. Boy, just give that tip love. And just outlining a little. And again, this will lighten up as it dries, just for that little bit of detail. We could even go in here. I don't want too much. All right, and I think I'm done. So I'm going to be transferring this into my little cookbook. I bought this years ago, and I'll see if I can find the link. It really isn't a watercolor paper, but it is a little thicker. So I'm just gonna transfer this. Me running out of room here, guys. Onto here, I'll probably put some leaves, some more little grapefruits. I know it kind of looks like an orange, but you know, you make your grapefruit the colors you want. And then I'll put the recipe in the middle. And I'll just hand write that, even though, you know, my handwriting isn't the best, guys, quite honest. But it's good enough. And I think it's kind of cool to have it in your own handwriting. All right, everybody, that's it. I hope you give these little grapefruits a try. What fun was that? And definitely work with your greens and your reds together to make those yummy neutrals. And there you go. If you'd like a drawing of this, I'm happy to redraw just the shapes, but it's pretty easy. It's just circles, really. And most of all, just keep having fun here. I am loving seeing you guys over at Patreon. If you want to go a little deeper into some of the things we talk about, there's a free membership there. And I thank so many of you for being here. You make this such a fun place to come. Like, we get up in the morning and I can't wait to see what you guys are doing. It's like first thing on my computer, reading your comments, so fun. And I think that's it. I wouldn't be here without you guys. You guys have been so supportive and you just inspire me with your ideas every day. And somebody asked me for this grapefruit. So there you go. I think it was Tina. I think it was you. There's your grapefruit, sweetie. I hope you give it a try. All right. I'll see you all soon. Thank you. Bye.